came back and attacked every country at once. First thing they would do is quickly return their mighty army and attack both the South and North Korea at the same time. They would be able to beat them both, showing the world their true power. After taking them, they would attack China, their old enemy. Like in the past, they would push the Chinese army far back, forcing Russia to join in to help their ally. However, Japan would shock the world and actually beat both Russia and China, forcing them to surrender and give Japan what they want. However, they would make the same mistake of attacking the United States. Even though they would be able to take some of their territory, the US Army would push them back and eventually defeat them. An invasion on Japan would follow, and even though they would almost trap the US forces, they would bounce back and beat the Imperial Japan. What would happen if Greenland got mad and got every country at once? First thing they would do is recruit as much people as they can and form an attack on Iceland, who wouldn't be expecting this and would get run over. After getting more territory, they would launch an attack on Norway, but that would be a little bit harder. The Norwegian troops would put up a great battle, but would eventually be defeated. Their next target would be Ireland, since they would try to get territory from the other side. An invasion would begin, and since Ireland doesn't have a strong army, they would be defeated. However, this would force the UK and Sweden to step in and quickly destroy the Greenland forces in Europe. A counter-invasion on Iceland would follow, after which Greenland would have no defense, resulting in them losing this war. What would happen if zombie apocalypse broke out today and infected the whole world? The country apocalypse would start in would be the United States. After an experiment would fail, zombie army would quickly start infecting people, and most of the US would be in trouble pretty fast. Canada and Mexico would try to close their borders, but it would be too late since the infection would spread to them pretty fast. People would try to fight back, but the zombies would pretty soon be holding the entire North America. Russian and European troops would try to free Alaska and Canada, while the rest of the world would attack from the south. Together, they would slowly start freeing them, with many survivors joining them to help in the fight. Zombies would get obliterated, helping the humans finally free their territory. What would happen if every country in Europe started to fight until only one remains? First country that would start attacking is Russia, and they would attack Ukraine, Belarus, and the Baltics, and defeating them with their strong army. In the west, Spain would take Portugal, while the UK would destroy Ireland. France would shock everyone and take Italy, while Germany would dominate and take the whole Central Europe. In the Balkans, Romania would be holding the one half, while Greece would defeat Turkey and take the other half of the Balkans. Russians wouldn't hold back, since they would take the whole Scandinavia for themselves. In the west, Germany would take the UK, while France would beat the Spanish. Russia would again attack and take the whole Balkans easily, while Germany would be able to defeat the Spanish forces. The final two countries standing would be Germany and Russia, and the fight would begin. Russian forces would be too much for the Germans, and this battle would end in their victory. What would happen if Canada got mad and got every country at once? First thing Canada would do is quickly take Alaska, which would force the US to attack them. However, Canadian troops would hold their position, forcing US soldiers to get tired and attack them after some time. They would be pushed far back, forcing them to surrender and give Canada land which they want. Next thing they would do is form an alliance with Ireland, and together they would attack and quickly beat the UK, getting a part of their land. France would be their next target, but Germany would send help, and together they would get ready for this attack. Canadian soldiers would successfully land in France, but that would be a trap. Their troops would be beaten, and their plan would fail. United States would use this situation and would quickly attack Canada, wanting to get revenge. With them weak now, the US would run through them, ending this battle. What would happen if Denmark got mad and got every country at once? First thing they would do is launch a surprise attack on Sweden, and before they could even react, Denmark would take their whole territory. With adding Swedish troops to their army, they would be able to attack Finland, who would put up a great fight, but would eventually be defeated. Norway would know they would be the next target, and would attack Denmark before they could react. This would be really successful, and they would almost end the Danish country. However, Denmark would turn this battle around, destroy their army, and win this war. They would form the Great Danish Empire and would get ready to attack Germany. Germany would get ready for this, and with NATO sending help, things wouldn't look so good. Danish troops wouldn't be able to advance, and with German troops pushing through their territory, they would finally fall. What would happen if every country started to fight until only one remains? United States would be the first one to act, and they would quickly take Mexico and Canada, uniting the whole North American continent. On the southern part, Brazil and Argentina would both be dominating, but with Brazil's stronger army, they would beat Argentina and take the whole continent for themselves. In Europe, United Kingdom would take the whole west, while Balkans would be under the Turks once again, while Russia would dominate in the eastern part. In Africa, Egypt and Algeria would split the northern part, while the south would be controlled by the South Africans. However, Egyptian army would come out on top, taking the whole Africa for them. In Asia, China would assert their dominance, taking the whole territory of that continent. However, USA troops would demolish South America and take half of the European and African territory, while the Russians would beat China and take the other half of the world. USA vs Russia would be the final battle, and after some fierce fighting, the United States would remain victorious. What would happen if Nigeria got mad and got every country at once? First thing they would do is get their army ready and attack Cameroon in the east and Niger in the north. Cameroon would quickly fall, but since Niger is in the desert, they would be able to resist, but would eventually be defeated. Nigerian troops would swoop through the Western African countries and would form the Great African Empire. They would still want to expand more, and with many countries surrendering to them, tensions would be high. Sahara Vanguard, an alliance against Nigeria, would form and would attack them. However, Nigerian army would be too strong, taking a huge chunk of their enemy's territory, forcing them to retreat. However, the US force would intervene and help the Sahara forces regain their territory. Nigerian army would be attacked from many sides, but would still hold. However, US forces would join the offensive, demolishing Nigeria and ending this conflict. What would happen if Monaco got mad and got every country at once? Since they don't have an army, they would pay soldiers from all Europe to fight for them, and they would form an army. A surprise attack on France would follow, with the Monaco army pushing them far back. French troops would be shocked, and with Paris falling, they would surrender. Their next target would be Italy, and with their new bought army, Italians would be pushed back and forced to defend. However, that wouldn't last long, since Rome would quickly fall, giving Monaco a part of their territory. Monaco's new neighbors would be scared, and they would get ready to destroy them. With their troops getting ready for battle, Monaco would try to pay Spanish and German troops, but they would refuse, and the battle would begin. Since being attacked from all sides would be impossible to defend against, their army would run away, helping the Allies defeat them. What would happen if India got mad and got every country at once? First thing they would do is get their army ready and attack their biggest enemy, Pakistan. This would be a tough battle, but Indian forces would prevail and take their whole territory. Their next targets would be Nepal and Bhutan, who wouldn't stand a chance against the Indian army. Bangladesh would pose a great threat, since they wouldn't be so easy to beat. China would send their army to the border, forcing India to expand westward, attacking Afghanistan. However, they would call their ally Iran, making a huge problem for the Indian forces. But they wouldn't mind, and would quickly take Afghanistan and push the Iran troops far back. China would use this situation and enter the war to beat their biggest threat. With Indian troops having to regroup, and with Iran and China pushing them from two sides, they wouldn't be able to hold much more and would have to surrender. What would happen if Sparta came back and destroyed the whole world? First thing they would do is separate from the Greek Republic, which would make Greece furious and force them to attack them. However, Spartans would shock the world and actually win this war. With them learning how to use guns, Europe would be scared. They would attack North Macedonia and Albania, wanting to expand their empire. Spartans would crush them, forcing all their neighbors to get their army ready. Serbia and Montenegro would be the next victim, but they would be a tough cookie to beat. Spartans would take heavy casualties, but would be able to take all their territory. Bulgarian and Romanian forces would use this and attack the wounded Spartan army, pushing them way back. Even though they would be outnumbered, they would be able to resist their attacks. But with Turkey joining this conflict, Spartans would be finally pushed back and eventually destroyed. What would happen if Mexico got mad and got revenge on the US? First thing Mexico would do is quickly take the whole Central America, spreading fear through the whole South. They would want to attack the United States, but their army still wouldn't be strong enough. They would instead turn to the South and rampage through their lands until they would meet resistance from the Brazilian and Argentinian forces. Even though they would fight hard, Mexico would overpower them and take control of the whole South America. They would prepare to get revenge on the US and would send cartels to wreak havoc on their land. With them distracted, Mexican army would push through, taking a huge chunk of their territory. The US would finally have enough and would target Mexican cities while their troops would be pushed far back. Mexico would try to change this war by making a surprise attack, but it would backfire, destroying their army, letting US win this war. What would happen if Winston Churchill came back and got every country he wants? First thing he would do is get his army ready and attack both Denmark and Benelux at the same time. They wouldn't be expecting this invasion, which would result in Denmark falling quick. Meanwhile, Belgium and Luxembourg would barely stand. They wouldn't be able to resist much further and would be destroyed. Germany would now be open on two sides, allowing Churchill to push them back and finally beat them. NATO would be furious and would prepare to attack the UK from many sides. This plan would be successful since the British forces would be crushed, only allowing a couple of soldiers to retreat to Netherlands and flee back home. NATO would try to invade the UK, but with Churchill's great navy, it wouldn't be possible. They would use this situation to quickly take Ireland and sign a peace deal with NATO, letting them keep Ireland. What would happen if Australia got mad and got every country it wants? First thing they would do is get their army ready and attack New Zealand. Since they wouldn't expect this invasion, they wouldn't have much time to react, which would result in Australia taking all their territory. Their next target would be Indonesia and Papua New Guinea. Australian forces would land on one of their islands and completely take it. Indonesia would ready their forces and prepare for the invasion. Even though they would try to resist, Australian forces would be successful and would land in their territory and finish them pretty soon. They would attack Malaysia and Philippines next, which would be their biggest mistake. Even though Malaysia would be destroyed, Filipino allies Japan and South Korea would secretly go around them. While invasion of Philippines would begin, they would attack Australia, who wouldn't be guarded well, and would finally destroy them. What would happen if Stalin came back and got every country he wants? His goal would be to reunite the Soviet Union, which he would do by attacking the Baltics and Belarus first. Stalin's army would run through them, moving to the next target, who would be Georgia, Azerbaijan, and Armenia. They would put up a good fight, but would be no match for the cruelty of the Stalin's army. They would attack the whole Central Asia next, which would be their biggest challenge yet. There would be a lot of back and forth in this battle, but with the new Soviet army, the whole Central Asia would fall into Stalin's arms once again. Their final quest would be to take Ukraine, which wouldn't be so easy. Finland and Poland would join in to help Ukraine, along with NATO's help. However, this wouldn't look good, since Soviets would demolish Ukraine and push deep into Poland. They would be forced to surrender, letting Stalin win. What would happen if Genghis Khan came back and got every country he wants? First thing he would do is send his army to the border with Russia, wanting his empire back. Since Russian forces would be having problems in Ukraine, not many soldiers would be in the Asian part, allowing Mongols to crush them and take a huge part of Russia. Russians would surrender and let them get some of their old territory. Their next target would be Kazakhstan, who would be ready for this attack. A fierce conflict would begin, but with Genghis Khan's fearless army, Kazakhstan would be demolished. Their final victim would be China, who would already be waiting for them. Mongols would rush in, destroying a part of the Chinese army. However, the Chinese would have enough and would send all of their army and push the Mongols out of China. With them outnumbered now, the last battle would happen, with the Chinese army winning. What would happen if Netherlands got mad and got every country it wants? First thing they would do is get their army to attack Belgium. But then, something crazy would happen. Part of the Belgian army would fight for the Dutch, helping them quickly end this conflict. Luxembourg would just join them, helping Netherlands create their new empire. They would attack France next and shock everyone because how fast they would push them back. French army would be beaten and would be forced to surrender. Their final quest would be to get revenge and finally beat Germany once and for all. Both sides would be getting ready for war, with NATO sending help to the Germans. The Dutch army would take a first victory, looking unstoppable. However, Germany would channel their World War II power and completely change the course of this war. The Dutch would be pushed back from Germany, and with NATO forces encircling them, they would eventually lose. What would happen if pharaohs got mad and got every country they want? They would first prepare to attack Libya, wanting to bring back their former glory. This would be a hard fight, but the Egyptian army would overpower them in the end. They would look at Middle East next, attacking Israel, Palestine, and Jordan at the same time. Since their army would be a lot stronger, their enemies wouldn't stand a single chance. They would go for Syria and Lebanon next, who would quickly be destroyed. Other Middle Eastern countries, led by Saudi Arabia, would form an alliance against the Egypt, creating a big problem. With their new big army, they would want to end Egypt fast, before they can reorganize their troops. However, Egypt would be successful in holding their territory, and with more of their troops coming, this battle would change. Egypt would pierce through their defense, beating their troops and taking their territory. What would happen if Croatia got mad and got every country it wants? First thing Croatia would do is prepare to attack their friend Slovenia, who has a lot weaker army and would succumb to Croatian forces. Their next victim would be Bosnia, which would be a huge mistake. Since half of the Bosnian population is Serbian, this would cause Serbia to join in and defend their people. Croatia would swoop the other part of Bosnia, while Serbian forces would be getting ready. Since Serbia would have a stronger army and Croatian forces would be tired, things wouldn't look so good. However, Kosovo would use this situation to attack Serbia, completely changing this war. With Serbia fighting a war on two sides, they would quickly be destroyed, letting Croatia take control. However, other Balkan countries would put aside their differences and declare war on the Croatians. With their army weak and tired from many wars, they wouldn't be able to hold against the Balkan Union, leading to their loss. What would happen if Japan got mad and got every country at once? First thing they would do is send their army to their ally South Korea and prepare to attack North Koreans together. With their combined army, North Korea wouldn't have a chance, and before they could launch a nuke, they would be destroyed. Japan would let them keep all of the conquered territory in exchange for a help in future conflicts. Japanese would quickly take Taiwan next, forcing China to attack them. However, China would make a mistake, since Japan and Korea would be a tough match. This war would last for years, but without anyone helping the Chinese, they would lose in the end. With these two countries controlling the Asia now, Japanese would attack Mongolia and Myanmar, while South Korea would attack the Philippines. Because their armies would be weaker and smaller, they would barely be able to defeat their enemies and stop more battles. What would happen if Ukraine got mad and got revenge on Russia? Since Ukraine wouldn't have the strength to attack Russia, they would have to look elsewhere, and they would attack their neighbor, Romania. Moldova would step in to help Romania, but that still wouldn't be enough. Since Ukrainian army would be stronger, they would defeat Romania. They would make an agreement with their friend, Poland, and together, they would attack Belarus and the Baltics, angering Russia. With their armies, they would quickly be able to defeat them, splitting all their territory. With Russians having enough, they would declare war on Ukraine and Poland. This would be a mistake, since they would be pushed back and forced to defend. However, NATO would no longer support Ukraine, and with Russian secret force helping Romanians make an uprising, things would change. Russia would focus all of their army on Poland, pushing them back and force them to surrender. With Ukraine being alone and having to deal with both Russian and Romanian forces, they would quickly collapse. What would happen if Luxembourg got mad and took every country at once? Luxembourg wouldn't have much choices, since they are bordering Belgium, France, and Germany. They would come to an agreement with the Netherlands and attack Belgium, who wouldn't be able to hold both sides and would be destroyed. However, Luxembourg would backstab the Dutch, attacking them unexpectedly and taking all of their territory. Even after getting all this territory and proclaiming the Greater Luxembourg, they would have to choose to attack either France or Germany. They would choose to attack France, getting their army ready and trying to quickly knock them out. However, the French have learned from their mistakes and would recruit as much people as they can and send them to fight. With France still alive, Luxembourg troops would be outnumbered and pushed far back into their territory. French army wouldn't show mercy and would rampage through their lands, finally destroying them. What would happen if Biden got mad and started a civil war today? First thing that both sides would do is get their army ready and prepare for a battle. Biden's Democratic army would have more troops, but their army would be cut by the Trump's Republican army. Republicans would use this advantage to completely cut their armies in half, creating a huge advantage and almost ending this war early. Biden would be furious and would make a pact with Mexico, who hate the Republicans. With the new strengths, this battle would become a lot different. Biden would try to connect their armies, which would be the end of the Trump's army. However, Trump would send most of his army east, while leaving only a small amount of soldiers to hold their territory. This would be a decisive choice, since New York and other eastern states would fall, leading to Mexico leaving this conflict. With them being alone now, Biden's army wouldn't be able to last long and would be demolished. What would happen if Vikings came back and conquered the whole world? First thing they would do is secretly invade the UK, landing in the north. The UK wouldn't have much time to react, and that would result in Vikings completely destroying their army and taking all of their land. Since they wouldn't be satisfied with this, they would attack Germany, who would expect this and would be ready. Even though Germany would be well equipped, the Vikings would fight hard, pushing through their lands and even taking the whole German territory. Other European countries would see this, and they would fear that they would be the next victim. With many countries uniting their armies, led by France, they would shock the Vikings and attack them when they wouldn't be expecting. Vikings would be furious and would send all of their army trying to avenge their dead soldiers. European countries would use this and circle the Vikings, finally destroying all of their army. And that's what would happen if Brazil got mad and took the world from favelas. First thing Brazil would do is get their army ready and attack both Bolivia and Paraguay, quickly taking them after some time. This would open up space to attack Argentina, who would quickly call the US for help. However, there wouldn't be time, since Brazil would push the Argentinians back, not letting the US forces help them. They would be destroyed, letting Brazil create the Greater Brazilian Empire. With the Uruguay surrendering, other South American countries would unite against them, but even that wouldn't be enough. Brazilian Empire would almost take the whole South America, but the US would finally have enough. They would deploy a huge amount of their forces to South America, and with help from the defending forces, the course of this war would change. Brazilian forces would be completely pushed back, and after some time, they would lose their whole territory. And that's what would happen if